Hi, this is Paige Pradko. Welcome to Therapy for a Better Life. Today I'm talking about anxiety disorders. And if you've been following along, you know that I have a system for treating anxiety that I call my C.A.L.M method. And it's an acronym. And C includes calming the body techniques. A includes accepting anxiety techniques. L includes logic techniques. We're working with thinking in logic. And M includes moving on, and those are distraction techniques. So this video is in the logic section, and we're working with our thinking. And our thinking is sometimes very negative and actually wrong. We make inaccurate predictions. And our negative thinking and critical thinking and sometimes our assumptions and faulty predictions get us into a lot of trouble. It causes us a lot of emotional pain, emotionally overreacting, and we can have very self-sabotaging behaviors because of our emotions. So this exercise that we're going to do today is called examining the evidence, and it's a CBT technique, cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's a similar technique in DBT that is called checking the facts. They're both very similar. And I'm going to just run down a series of questions. What we do is we identify the assumption that we're making or the interpretation, and then we put it on trial. We check if there's evidence for or against, and it includes a series of questions. So the first question is, what is my thought, interpretation, or assumption? The second question is there any evidence contrary to my thought or assumption? The third question is there any evidence supporting my thought or assumption? The fourth question is, what is the probability of my thought or assumption coming true? And the fifth is, if I were to ask a really wise friend, what would they tell me about my thought or assumption or prediction? The sixth question is, if I look at this from a positive viewpoint instead of a negative one, what difference would that make? How would I feel about that? And the last question is, does this all matter? Do I think it would matter a year from now? What about 5 years from now? So let's run through an example. I have a client who does not believe that she is going to get a promotion. She believes her boss doesn't like her, and so she thinks, no, my boss will never choose me for this promotion. Okay, that's her assumption. That's her thought and prediction. And so the second question is there any evidence contrary to your thought? And we find out that, wow, her boss is the one who actually asked her to fill out the paperwork for the promotion, to put her application in. And in her last review, she actually had a very good review, a very good rating. So let's ask a little more here. What is the evidence that supports her thought? And we find out that the evidence that supports her thought is that the boss didn't look at her when she passed her in the hallway the other day, and the boss didn't say hi to her at a meeting. Okay, so we can see now that she's almost making a lot of assumptions about behaviors she's seeing in her boss. So we'll go forward. What is her prediction that she actually will not get this promotion? What's the probability that she will not get it? And she really kind of looked at all these predictions and she said, oh, it's probably about a 5% chance that I won't get the job. Okay. So the next question is, what would a wise friend say? And a wise friend would say to her, my gosh, your boss would never ask you to fill out the paperwork for applying for the promotion if she didn't think you were great for it. And you got a great review. You're probably going to get the job. And even if you don't, hey, you're in control. There's a lot of, things that you could choose to do that, even other opportunities that you would be great at. Now, if she looked at it, number 6, if she looks at it from a positive viewpoint, she said, wow, if I looked at it from a positive viewpoint, I would feel confident. I would get excited that this was going to happen. And I want to bring up an interesting point that I see in a lot of people. They are, even if there's overwhelming evidence that something is going to be positive, they like to really concentrate on the worst case scenario. They like to concentrate on the negative one. And I think they're protecting themselves. They're almost rehearsing that they can handle the disappointment. They almost are practicing in their mind that they can handle the disappointment, because if the chance comes that they're disappointed, they want to be prepared. And they almost have this fear of being hopeful, this fear of being confident. And it's interesting, but I think we have a lot of self-protections that we put in place to avoid ourselves from any kind of disappointment. If people learned they could actually handle disappointment and they could cope with it, I think they would be much healthier there. And the last question is, what difference does this make to you 1 year from now and 5 years from now? And this client would say, maybe it would make a difference in 1 year, but 5 years probably not, that they would make some other adjustments in their life and kind of get through this scenario just fine. So that was an example of examining the evidence. Now, if we were looking at the DBT technique on checking the facts, they add an emotional component that I think is interesting. They kind of say, look, anxiety has a fear base. There's something that you're fearing. And they, kind of say, is there justification for fear here? And DBT goes on to explain that the only real justification for fear is if your life is threatened, or if somebody you care about, their lives are threatened. Anything other than that, it's really not a justification for fear. And so if they like you to look at that and say, you're feeling anxious about this particular interview and promotion. Is fear justified? And in DBT, they like you to realize that our brain goes right to fear and produces anxiety when it's really not justified. Again, we have these crazy brains. So it's an interesting perspective. And I hope you enjoyed learning about examining the evidence or checking the facts. And if you'd like learning about some of these techniques for treating anxiety and you'd like to hear more, please click subscribe. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you in session. Thank you. Bye-bye.